With all the craziness these days, we're going to take a break from politics, at least pretty much, today, and talk about an incredible novel, Alter Ego by Alex Segura. That's especially appropriate because Alter Ego is centered around the world of comic books. And it seems to many of us that we're living in such a crazy world today. Alter Ego is the follow up sequel to Segura's thrilling prize winning novel, Secret Identity, also featuring a Cuban American heroine, Annie Bustamante. In Annie's story, Segura celebrates the childlike wonder and storytelling power of comic books and pays homage to overlooked and underrepresented storytellers. Called a genius, a sellout, a visionary, a hack, Annie Bustamante is sick of the money grab in her industry. It's a deftly written mystery that hooks you from chapter one. Here's what famed thriller writer David Baldacci, who we recently interviewed on this program, had to say. Segura is an excellent writer, and he brings his A game to this rollicking page ripper. Don't miss it. Having read this book, I agree. And I'm delighted to bring you author Alex Segura today. Hey, man, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be here. Always happy to swing by.
Hey, tell me, Alter Ego is a sequel of sorts to your Secret Identity, which is also set in the comic book world. How are the two stories connected? And do you need to read Secret Identity first in order to make sense of Alter Ego?
You don't have to. The term we're using is quote unquote standalone sequel, which is to say you can read Alter Ego on its own. In fact, I've met with readers who read in their own order. They'll read Alter Ego first, then hop back to Secret Identity, and then read the Lynx graphic novel as its own thing. They're connected in that the character, the legendary Lynx, is the through line between both novels. So in Secret Identity, it's the story of Carmen Valdez, who creates this character in secret. No one knows she's created it, and it becomes a hit, and then her collaborator is murdered. So she has to investigate his murder to reclaim the character. Alter Ego jumps forward to the present day, and we meet Annie, who basically got into comics from reading this character, the legendary Lynx. And it's at this point in the present day, the Lynx has become this obscure, forgotten kind of slice of IP. And so when she's invited while on a break from her successful film career to come back and draw and write a new Legendary Lynx comic book series, it's hard to say no. But then she soon realizes that the stakeholders, the people that own this character, might not have the best intentions in mind.
Okay. Now, what prompted you to choose the comic book universe as the setting for your books, Alex?
Comics have been a part of my life since as far back as I can remember. I remember getting that first Archie Comics Digest as a kid in the checkout line and reading, being the kid that would bike to the pharmacy to pick up his comics every week at the spinner rack or the comic book shop as those became more common in my neighborhood. And then I started working in comics first as a reporter covering the industry, but then as a publicist, a marketing person, an editor, a writer. So I've seen it from every angle, and it felt like a very lively setting for a mystery. And I think noir novels can exist in any space. They don't have to be on the gritty streets of the town as you follow the private eye. I think those are great books, but I think you could have crime novels in any setting, whether it's comics, cheerleading, science, gymnastics, anything, because it's really those elements of the crime are what's fascinating. And then you have this great backdrop of the world that maybe readers aren't super familiar with.
Okay, so you incorporate comic book pages into Alter Ego. Why did you do that, and how do they amplify the story?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first read Cavalier and Clay, Michael Chabon's wonderful Golden Age comic book novel that won every award and is still beloved by so many, I remember reading it and being so fascinated about the characters and comics that they talk about in the story. And I was like, wouldn't it have been cool if they'd had the comics interspersed in the novel? And this was in my 20s or late teens when I was in college. And so when the idea for Secret Identity came together, I thought maybe this is the opportunity, because not only do you read the prose and get into Carmen's head about what's going on, but then you can read her creation. And that's really what happens in Alter Ego as well. You read the story and follow Annie's solving the mystery and dealing with the mystery, but then you also see what she's working through creatively on the page in the comics that she creates. Yeah.
Okay. Now, both stories feature Cuban American heroines as lead protagonists. Was their journey facing the racism and sexism of the industry important for you to highlight?
Yeah, it was. I think sometimes, particularly with Secret Identity, the question I sometimes get is why did you choose to make the protagonist a woman? And I think part of it is there wouldn't be a mystery if it was a man. If it was the story of a man who wanted to write a character, they would ask to write the character in the 70s and get the opportunity. The
Mhm.
mystery, sorry, there's an ambulance behind me, but the downfall of the downside of living in New York City is you hear the traffic. But the mystery, it was interesting to me because she was an outsider trying to get into this industry, and she had to jump over a lot of hurdles and go through a lot of hoops to just get the opportunity that would have come very easily had she been a man. And I think with Annie and Alter Ego, she's at a different point. She's made some great successes. She's become really established in the entertainment industry as a director and as an artist, but she still had to struggle to get to that place. And so it's really about showing, yeah, things have changed, but things haven't changed all that much.
Yeah. Do you see racism and sexism as a continuing problem in the world of creativity, whether it's writing novels or being in the movies or being in comic books or whatever?
I think we still struggle with it in the world. I wish we didn't. I think that people have these built-in biases and perspectives that we really need to work towards creating a level playing field for everyone to have these opportunities. And I think in terms of novels, I think there's always a great interest in marginalized writers telling stories about their traumatic experiences. But I think we need to get to a point where it's commonplace for marginalized writers to tell any kind of story, funny
Mm.
story, a strange story, like anything.
Okay, so you had two Cuban American heroines. You picked Cuba. You decided to bring someone in from that part of the world to be the heroine in your books. Why did you do that?
I feel really strongly in the sense of identification when you're reading a story. I've read stories where I've seen people like me, whether they're Latino or Cuban, particularly, or from Miami. I was born in Miami. My parents are Cuban. I think that's a very unique kind of perspective. And I've heard from readers who said, I read the story and I felt great identification with these characters because they're not traditionally the protagonists of the story. And I think the struggle with a lot of Latin characters is that for a long time they've been portrayed as the sidekick or the comic relief or the villain slash criminal. And I think to not only give identification to other readers like that, but to also educate readers who might not be familiar with these worlds, like to show them that yes, anybody could be the protagonist. And it's really about sharing a unique perspective, a different kind of story, and not every character has to be the same.
Okay. Did the, I don't know whether this is an appropriate question for you or not, but anyway,
Okay.
did all the stuff about Donald Trump's blasting the immigrants and wanting to do this mass deportation, did any of that play into your decision to select someone from that part of the world to be the heroine of your book?
No, I think Trump is the problem in that regard, but I don't think he was the impetus for me to want to tell a story about someone who's shared some of my experiences. I think that really just came from my own personal desire to see more stories like that. You create the stories you want to see on the page, and that hopefully opens the door for more people to tell those kind of stories.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, Trump's hyper focus on immigration in the is just his whole platform. We could have a whole separate podcast just about what I think about Trump's vile platform. Yeah, but no, he doesn't influence my creative decisions.
You know what? Actually, after we're done talking about your book, maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation about that.
Okay.
Because that's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah,
Yeah. So anyway, how did comic books influence you when you were growing up? And I presume you're still a fan of comics, right?
I am. Yeah, I write comics for a lot of places like Marvel and DC and characters like Dick Tracy, Star Wars, a bunch of them. I mean, comics are a part of my daily life. My son loves reading comics. My daughter is starting to read comics. She's starting to read. So it's just kind of part of our day to day. And I love the blending of imagery and words. And I think it's a
Uh,
very unique medium. There's nothing like it. It's a medium, it's not a genre. I think sometimes people think, oh, comics, it's just superheroes. You can tell any kind of story in comics, whether it's a very insular POV, grounded story, fantasy, sci-fi, crime, superheroes, memoir. And I think the flexibility of the medium is why it succeeds and continues to evolve and change. in the industry, there's always a joke, oh, comics are dying. And that's been the joke for 50 years. And it's
Uh,
not dying, it's just changing. And I think that's a testament to how beloved it is as a medium.
what comics do your kids like? Especially the
Uh,
little, you said you had a little girl that's just starting to read, right?
yeah, we read a lot of like old Silver Age comics, meaning from like the 50s and 60s,
Oh,
Legion of
yeah.
Superheroes or
Yeah.
Doom Patrol. My son loves Spider-Man and the classic like Silver Age Marvel stuff like Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and Thor, but also Batman. And so a lot of fondness for superheroes, a lot of he loves like Dogman and things like that. Yeah, he's a pretty avid reader of comics, which is nice.
Did you ever think about writing a comic book of yourself?
No, I don't have that kind of ego, but I do. There's a lot of me in those in the characters I create, so that feels like enough.
Yeah, but I mean, have you ever thought about drawing comics, or aren't you an artist?
I'm not an artist. The
Mm.
artist on the comic books, the yeah, the comic book artist on In Secret Identity and Alter Ego's Sandy Gerald, a really fantastic, super talented guy. I've known him a long time, and he was perfect for this book. I used to
Okay.
want to draw comics when I was a kid and in high school, and then I found I could create more and do stuff faster just writing. And I still
Okay.
doodle from time to time, but I'm nowhere near being like competent for prime time.
Okay. Now, do you see with you mentioned Marvel and DC, the superhero franchises and the popularity of the Comic Con, what is it called? Comic Con, it's a fan convention.
Yeah, comic conventions. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, do you think that we're in a golden age of comics? Is this really increasing the interest in comics?
I would say so. I think we've just got a level of awareness that never existed. I mean, you have comics thriving in every platform. Like you can read them in a comic shop, you can read them on your iPad, you can go to a bookstore. They're more readily available, and also just the awareness created by the media. There's movies, TV shows, podcasts. It's all, it's not an insular kind of niche thing anymore, and it's not looked
Mhm.
at, oh, that's something just the kind of the weird kids do. It's really like a general populist thing, which is fantastic. And there's doorways into it from everywhere. It's not just superhero stuff, but it's also there's comics for kids, comics for adults. It's the spectrum of comics you can get is wide ranging, and really it's really beautiful.
Okay. Now, you've been traveling around the country on a media tour to promote your book, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Has that given you a sense of what's on people's minds these days? Do people talk, when you do that, do people talk to you about other stuff besides your book?
It's usually the way these events go is you do a Q&A, you talk
Yeah.
about your book, and then you take some
Yeah.
questions about the book and about your creative process. And I
Mm.
think a lot of readers are looking for comfort, for stories that bring them entertainment and comfort and a little bit of an escape from the news. The news is constant. I think we're in a world where it's really, you have to make a thoughtful effort to disconnect a little bit with social media, your phone buzzing every 2 seconds, email. It's really hard to step back and assess what's going on. But yeah, I think people are bracing for what's next, and I don't think that's strange.
No, it's not. And I was just wondering if in any of these conversations with people that you had a sense of concern, whether people are concerned about what we might face over the next 4 years.
Yeah, I've definitely had these conversations with friends and casual acquaintances, but I think the bulk of those moments on tour were really book focused, which was a
Okay.
nice balm to
Yeah,
not be
sure.
thinking about what's coming in
Sure.
some ways, which not in an escapist way, but just as a little reprieve.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the last couple of days we've been reading that Trump wants to, let's see, he wants to take over Canada. He wants Canada to become the next state. He wants to take over the Panama Canal. He wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And he wants to take over Greenland. And he says that he's willing to use military force to do that, along with the Panama Canal situation. And what are your thoughts about all of that?
And I think we're getting a taste of what we went through for 4 years during
Yeah.
his first term of these unhinged statements that are then covered in extreme detail by the press as if they were fait accompli, and they're not always. Sometimes he doesn't seem well to me. He seems like he's rambling at a lot of these press conferences and really just saying whatever comes to mind, and which
Mhm.
isn't to say we should minimize it and not take it for what it is, but I think we're going to enter another stretch where we're going to have this barrage of things. Every fleeting thought or comment he makes will become a big story, and we have to parse that information and decide what is really important to engage with. And that's the challenge.
Do you see any of that as fodder for a future novel for you?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, definitely fertile material there.
There's lots of fertile material there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Okay. You got anything else you'd like to add? What's next for you? What do you got coming up?
Yeah, it's so funny because Alter Ego came out at the end of the year, but it's really only been out for a month. So I'm excited to see how people react to it and respond to it.
Yeah.
I'm working on a Daredevil crime novel, Daredevil, the Marvel superhero. So that'll be coming out sometime this year. And I'm writing a lot of comics for Marvel and DC, different things, and my own comics. And my next crime novel will hopefully come out sometime in 2026.
So
My next
you,
standalone, not Daredevil.
yeah, okay. So you said you're writing crime novel, writing comics?
Yeah, I'm writing the Star Wars Battle of Jakku series for Marvel, The Question for DC, Dick Tracy for Mad Cave. I'm pretty trying to stay busy.
Sounds like you are. That's pretty cool. All right.
Like,
Yeah. So people can find your books about anywhere, right?
yeah, wherever books are sold, you can find
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
hopefully.
Oh, I'm going to put a link on in the description for Amazon. So anybody that is interested can just click on that link if you want. But
Mhm.
it's great talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Alex?
No, you can just find more information at alexsegura.com, and my newsletter's there too. So if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, that's the best place to go.
Super.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Hey guys, I'm Bob Gaddy, founder and host of Lean to the Left. I'm excited to share our new book, Hijack Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness, co-authored with political analyst and professor C.J. Waldron. In Hijack Nation, we delve into the unfolding story of America's political landscape through a series of essays from leantotheleft.net. We explore how Donald Trump's presidency has transformed American politics, challenging our values and institutions. Hijack Nation isn't just a book, it's a call to action. It invites you to reflect on what it means to be American in a divided political landscape. Together we can reclaim our nation's greatness. So get your copy of Hijack Nation today. Visit leantotheleft.net and click on the Books tab to learn more and to order.